South Africa is rich, and yet most South African workers are poor. Where do the profits go from our gold, our platinum, our tourism, our manufacturing? How much of it is taken overseas or used to pay dividends and bonuses? So a typical mine worker in our platinum mines would take 40 years to earn as much as the CEO's Christmas bonus. So today we ask, is business in South Africa on strike when it comes to wages, investments, and paying their dues? Here to try and answer those questions are Orlando Makhubela, Chief Director of Financial Investments and Savings in the National Treasury, Khanyisile Kweyama, CEO of Business Unity South Africa and former Executive Director at Anglo American South Africa, Kuseni Dlamini, Chairman of Massmart, Ayabonga Qawe, Oxfam, Philemon Bembe, a National Coordinator from Satawu, Dick Forsland, economist and researcher, Tamara Paramore from the Center for Competition, Regulation and Economic Development, Trevor White, partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And in our audience, we have workers, we have business people, we have trade unionists and communities from right across South Africa affected by these issues. Welcome to you all. Thank you so much for being here. And you at home can send us your thoughts on Facebook or Twitter. But before we begin our discussion, take a look at this.
South Africa's economy was built on mining, but at what cost to human life? Vuyani Dwadube started mining at 23. He contracted TB and silicosis working underground.
From 79 to 95. When 95 in the end of man I retrench. I can't hear ngoba benibangaya kwezinanti kazala kwababe mine omsikazi kuthiwa iTB yama ibhatala.
According to workers, mining houses have known for years how to reduce the risks of silicosis. They failed to follow health and safety procedures that could have prevented more cases, in fact, denying that they were even responsible.
Ndifike emayini ndingaguli mna mama bendingagule emayini imayini ayimqeshi umuntu ogulayo njengoba namhlanje ndike ndeva kunyaka opheleyo lona umuntu wabanjwa lithuli lenkomo ithuli lenkomo yintoni.
Now that gold and platinum prices have fallen, companies claim they don't have the resources to pay higher wages and take care of workers' health and other needs.
It's been a tactic of many businesses, and especially large businesses in South Africa, to evade some of the labor legislation that has come out of our past. We've seen over the last couple of years, and this has been the story of the current economic order, is that leaving money in the hands of big businesses doesn't mean that's going to improve the economy. What they do is they keep it in the reserves or they ship it off to financial sectors.
In 1999, Anglo American, then the world's largest gold mining operation, got permission from the South African government to transfer its primary listing to London, taking billions of rands with them. The company argued this would be good for South Africa. They would raise more capital and would bring money back into the country. But this doesn't seem to have happened. In retrospect, at least one Anglo boss acknowledges
Anglo's decision in 1998 to re-domicile to London was a mistake for the company and a mistake for the country, and I deeply regret it.
This is the tip of the iceberg of money fleeing the country, sometimes legally, sometimes not.
There should be a focus on increasing the capacity and integrity of tax and customs agencies and on strengthening tax legislation to better address the abuse of tax systems between countries that takes place through transfer mispricing and other practices.
Money moved offshore into foreign stock exchanges or tax havens is money that's not paying workers better wages or reaching communities. Many of our companies do reinvest in communities, mainly through corporate social responsibility. From 2012 to 2014, Anglo American spent 100 million on education projects in Limpopo and the Northwest. 3.2 billion over 5 years in healthcare, housing and sanitation. But are these programs sustainable and enough? Vuyani and Zwelinkosi are taking their former employer to court for failing to take care of their health or pay compensation. They are part of a large class action lawsuit involving more than 300,000 workers and 6 mining companies.
Government, vuka emaqandeni sukusikhathalela xa ufuna ivoti kuthi. Awukujonge kakuhle ezi mine zitya amagazi wabantu zisenza ingcukuthi. Sikwazi ukubhatalwa, sikwazi ukukhulisa abantwana bethu.
So, Khanyisile, I'll start with you. Companies like the one that you headed, Anglo American, made trillions through the apartheid years. But at the TRC, business said that it bore little to no responsibility for the human rights abuses, for the exploitation of workers. Have we let you off the hook?
You know, I cannot speak on behalf of Anglo American, as
Sure.
you properly said, former. But I can tell you that some of the comments that I made by the victims of certain of the areas are very valid. And I think where we are in South Africa today, there is quite a big acknowledgement by business that there is a lot that has been done in the past that has been unjust. We lived in a society that absolutely had no recognition for workers and basically supported a system that said you can thrive and workers don't have to thrive. We have moved on in terms of policies, in terms of legislation. Whether we have been able to address that adequately, no one would ever say it's enough.
Sure. Part of the problem is that a lot of money has left the country. I mean, for instance, in 1998, Anglo American took billions to London when it moved its headquarters. So how do we get that money back?
Well, I don't know about how you get that money back because when it's gone, it's gone. And you had the former CEO of Anglo Gold saying, Ashanti, saying it was a mistake on the part of the company. It was a mistake on the part of government to allow it. Right. But we are not going to see it come back. And that is a reality that we have to deal with, as sore and painful as it is. So let us deal with what we can fix.
So Tamara, I'll bring you in here. I mean, is it not unrealistic to expect big companies like Anglo to pay for our historic injustices? I mean, don't we need big business in South Africa?
No, I don't think anyone around this table, if I can call it that, would say that we don't need big business in South Africa. But what kind of big business do we need? We also have to look at what leaves the country. You know, because for every kind of entry, there's an entry and there's an exit sometimes. So we have to think about the kind of the money that's leaving illicitly, money that's leaving via tax evasion, perhaps even tax avoidance, etc.
So Dick, I'd like to bring you in here. So Anglo have taken a whole bunch of money out of the country. Yeah. I mean, is it really enough to say, cool, that's happened, you know, we can't get it back, but hey, let's invest?
No, it's not enough. And Anglo Platinum sent off 27 billion rand in dividends in 2009-2010 to its mother company, Anglo American. And I mean, the Anglo American is a conglomerate of 900 companies, whereof 90 of them are in tax havens. So you have to have a capacity in the South African Revenue Service, in the tax authorities to come to grips with this. And most importantly, I think, today is to take away the wheel of secrecy over all the daughter companies of these. I mean, that is what we come up for in the wage negotiations and in the gold sector, because it's from these subsidiaries that this tax evasion and tax avoidance takes place, this aggressive tax planning. And the reason why you are demanding this in a wage negotiation is because the wage evasion, if you like, is much higher than the tax evasion. If you're moving out 100 million rand, you earn, if the corporate tax rate is 28%, you earn 28 million rand.
Right.
But I mean, 72 million rand is also gone, and it's taking away from the
some
stakeholder.
companies hide behind the management
It's taking away
fees.
from the workers, from the communities, social investment, etc. So it's very, very important also for trade unions, not only NGOs, for trade unions to engage in this debate about so-called, because it's wage evasion, which is the large amount, sort of the social investment, that is the large thing that is happening.
All right.
And it's a massive rip-off, and it's going on today.
Orlando, I mean, you're from National Treasury. Why are we letting big business get away with this? We're letting them take tons of money out of the country. We're allowing them to pay our workers peanuts.
So let me make couple of points, Ms. Chavan, and try and bring some balance to the debate. So there is an economic reality out there in South Africa. So firstly, South Africans are not saving enough. So what you have is a situation where you don't have sufficient funds to fund investments, and you actually need investments to grow the economy. If South Africans can save and invest more domestically, then you don't need to rely excessively on foreign inflows. But you do need FDI. The second point is around tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. If you do get corporates, and you do find situations where, unfortunately, they use very aggressive mispricing. So just to give the audience a sense. So what they tend to do is to look at countries which have got very low or no tax at all, and then they will set up their operations there. Then they will price their products quite highly so that the profits will be on the high side. But because the tax is low or there isn't any tax, in a way they get away with not paying tax. So part of the solution is to try and see how you can get companies to be transparent and disclose what exactly they're doing in various countries.
Right.
And have sufficient laws to be able to discourage some of the behavior.
Okay, so the government says that companies need to pay their shareholders overseas. I mean, is there anybody from a community or from a trade union who'd like to comment about this at this point? Yes, sir, right at the back.
You cannot say South Africans are not saving enough when they get nothing. What are you going to save when you get nothing at all? In business, we look at mining Lekgotla, mining Indaba, it's business and government. Communities are not part and parcel of those decision-making. That's why we cannot have an economy that looks after or make sure that is our communities benefit. In the mining area, there is poverty, there is diseases, there is unemployment, which leads to death. And those people...
If I may just jump in there, but they want people to get richer by getting investment from outside. What do you say about that?
No, what you're talking about capital flight. The capital flight is when they say they've got loans to start a mine. And what they do is they open an account in Switzerland. And even if you've already paid up those loans, they say to the government, you're still paying. And that money, it will keep on going outside. The government is failing, the business is failing to respect the Bill of Rights.
Thank you so much. If I may just jump in there. Thank you very much for that. Kuseni, I'd like you to respond to what Mishak has said. I mean, what about the fact that we can't track the amount of money that's leaving South Africa?
Mrs. Chaba, I think that's a very important point. There is good work being done by the South African government, by the AU, to trace monies that are leaving South Africa. This is a global issue. I think Mishak is raising a very important point. We need to tighten regulations. We need to make sure that we can follow the money, and if it's been taken illegally, it must be brought back. The other point that I want to raise is that we shouldn't just focus on foreign investment. We should also focus on giving incentives for local investors to expand their operations. That's the most sustainable way in which we can create jobs, grow the economy, include our communities. We need to build formidable South African companies. The mentality that we'll get some companies from London or from elsewhere in the world to come and solve our problems is not sustainable.
All right, thank you
Mr.
very
Chaba,
much,
if
Mishak.
I may
Thank
comment about the community that, I think it's Mishak, the gentleman, but it's not 100% to say that communities are always excluded. I mean, NEDLAC is a perfect example of not only business, government, labor sitting around that forum, but also communities as an equal voice in all the deliberations that, that go there.
Patrick Craven, where's Patrick?
NUMSA's view is that there aren't just one or two things wrong with the way business is run, but that it's fundamentally, inherently problematical because it's ruled by greed and exploitation. That all these billions and trillions we talk about being sent around the world, whether legally or illegally, which is not a fundamental difference in my view, were stolen from the workers who created that wealth.
Thank you.
I think reducing the exploitation of South African workers, I think, is where the answer is. South Africa, and in the rest of Africa, I think that there is a degree of global racism in terms of the racial division of labour. You know, and if you are a worker who is white and you are in Australia or Canada, you get much better conditions. If we want to talk about a globalized world and a global village, and the CEOs get global remuneration, then workers should get equal work for equal pay globally.
Thank you. We have a woman from Sakau. Patricia, please stand up for us.
The problem does not lie with these big issues of capital flight, foreign direct investment, etc. and so on. Even if there's foreign direct investment, companies like Walmart go around the world and they look for where they can invest in order to maximize their profits. The main problem that we have in the sector, and might I add, it's mainly women that are being employed. And the exploitation is even going further with the increase in the forms of atypical work, in the form of casual work, outsourcing, labor broking, what companies call flexi-timers, workers working on Sunday and Saturdays without overtime, just annulling contracts, etc. and so on. The chairperson of Massmart knows about the atypical forms of work. At the moment, we're also having a dispute with Massmart around the changes in the working conditions of workers, from workers being reduced from permanent workers to flexible workers. So that is where the exploitation, and that is where business is making its money, because labor, and in particular women, are expandable. And I'm sure if the economy has been driven by women, then we would make a much better job of it.
Yes, now. Hello. Thank you very much. Kuseni, you run Massmart, which is one of the biggest retail employers in South Africa. Massmart has recently just tagged up with Walmart, and we all know that Walmart is well known for its very aggressive sort of anti-union policies and for hiring casual workers. But don't you think, Kuseni, that given our history, you have a responsibility to create good, well-paid jobs?
Oh, absolutely. I believe in decent jobs. I strongly support that agenda. When Walmart came in, there were fears and indeed allegations that Walmart will come in and Massmart will become a union basher. And secondly, there were fears that local suppliers are going to be squeezed and they'll disappear. The opposite has happened. We at Massmart have a very good relationship with our colleagues at Sakau. There are issues that come up from time to time, but we have a framework. We have processes that are formal and that regulate the relationship.
So you don't engage labor broker workers then in Walmart?
I will touch on that point.
Well, actually, let's touch on that point now, if we may, because now we're talking about the people now.
Okay,
do you engage the unions?
We engage the unions when it comes to the issue of casualizations, which is a very important matter. Within Massmart, we are currently busy with a process of moving casuals to being permanent, because we are committed to making sure that we look after all our employees. That comes as the top priority for us.
Is there anybody here who would like to comment? Yes, ma'am, right at the back.
I'm very happy that we started by looking at what Ms. Chaba showed us. part of what we saw there is the victims and survivors. The same companies, multinational companies, have run away with trillions and billions away from South Africa. To us, it's a pain because we look at how they managed to do those billions and trillions is because they put forward profit before the lives of the people and also before the economic of this South Africa. If in the panel, I hear some people saying that let's let bygones. Those who have, if we cannot follow the issue of asking those companies to plow back because they have get more profits to plow back is what we need to be here to say. They must plow back, reparation, and do redress in order this country can be better.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Well, definitely, I see all of your hands up. We'll give you an opportunity to respond. But Khanyisile, I mean, do you share the sentiment of this sense of immorality in business? I saw you shaking your head. What were you disagreeing with?
I was shaking my head at the statement that Umama made that says, we said, let bygones be bygones. Saying let bygones be bygones, it's almost like you whiffing your hand away at the problem. And that assumes that I don't come from a community. I was born in Atteridgeville. I live with the people there. I was raised by parents who had to go and work hard to ensure that I get an education and get to a level where I am able to sit in a corporate with others. So I'm the last person that would say, let bygones be bygones. We need to have an honest conversation about who puts money in to ensure that we go in and dig out, whether it's the minerals, we put up the production facilities, we put up the factories so that people can have a job. And they have an expectation. That's why it's called investment. Just like when you invest in a unit trust, you expect that at some stage you will get money back from the investment that you have made. So we're talking about it on a large scale now. So we need to balance the needs of that investor who has put in money in the first place so that it can become productive and become wages. So the government of the ANC in 1994 inherited debt, inherited all sorts of other dynamics that were part of that economy. That has to be the conversation that we have, that how does the structure of the economy change? And I say this because I'm also on the National Planning Commission, and we need to achieve certain levels of growth by 2030 so that we can ensure that this country is catering to its people.
And yet the gap between you and Umama over here is so huge. That's the problem that we're having right now. Reparations are not enough. We need to create jobs, don't we?
But that's the point. If we don't create an environment where people want to invest in our country, they want to bring money from overseas to invest, to develop, to open new businesses, we can't create jobs. South Africa doesn't have enough capital to create the jobs. And just to agree, those investors, if we don't give them a reasonable return on their money, are going to invest somewhere else. And unfortunately, they want a return. And what we currently seem to be debating here is around legal returns that they're getting. What about the illegal monies that are flowing out of our country? The people that are over-invoicing or under-invoicing, depends which way they want the money to flow, to get the money out of the country. No one around this table is talking about those people.
Dick?
So I don't think it's correct to say that there's not enough capital in the country. Right now, you have something that is almost be called an investment strike. So you have 600, 700, 800 billion rand lying idle on the bank accounts. Of course, they are lying idle on the bank accounts because the capitalists or the investors, they are wanting a higher return, etc., etc. But I mean, there's always higher returns elsewhere when you have completely free movement of capital, which this government has introduced. But you can't accept such a situation. You have to control the capital flows. We have a low tax economy today in South Africa. We can't give the mining companies the main responsibilities for building social infrastructure in the villages, etc. It's not their responsibility. They're only thinking about their profits. You have to stop to borrow money from the capitalists, from the financial industry, and you have to start to tax and invest that money. I mean, that is the main structure that has to take place.
Mixed up in the conversation is illicit flows and then money sitting on bank accounts. They're very different things. If we can create a safe environment for the capitalists, the business owners to invest, they will invest their money because that's what they want to do. They want to get
Ayabonga, let's let Ayabonga
I think there's two things here that we're overlooking. The first one is something that Khanyisile raised, which is around the inherited structure. What is this inherited structure? If you look at the relationship between the colonial and the apartheid state and business, you didn't have influx control, hard taxes, passes, and all of this legislation just for fun, right? You had that legislation to repress the wages of black workers so that the sector could be profitable, right? Now, if we are going to say that the National Development Plan, which is based largely on wage repression, right? It's saying that workers must sacrifice for a particular period so that we can achieve the growth, but without actually saying what is the human cost of that sacrifice. The second question I want to ask is to my brother here from PwC. I think we're talking about illicit flows here and aggressive tax planning, but we're not talking about who are the professional services firms, the lawyers, the auditors, the consultants that are advising some of these companies around some of the more optimal tax structures that they can use to avoid their tax incidents.
Kuseni.
We need to focus on creating a world-class competitive investment environment so that we can have more companies, and on the back of that, we'll have more workers. On the back of that, we'll have unions. There's a symbiotic relationship between business and labor. And I believe that in the ultimate analysis, business stands to benefit from an inclusive society, from a society where there is less inequality, less poverty, communities that are economically viable, that have got disposable income. It's in the enlightened self-interest of business to ensure that.
Well, I know, is government scared of big business? I mean, you look like you have something to say.
It's a fair question. I don't think we are. Government is already the biggest employer in the country. So you need someone to step in to try and assist with the current unemployment levels. And you can only rely and ask business to play their role. Secondly, as government, our role is to enable the environment. And this is where the rules, the regulations come in. And I take the point around tax evasion, etc. And it's a valid point, because in a way you can use tax to start subtly redistributing some of the income in the system. Of course, you have to do it quite tactfully, because it doesn't help also overtaxing companies and they go out of business. Then you have nobody to tax. And the tax revenue is quite useful. So I take the points from community, but one of the points which we need to make is that we actually use that tax revenue to try and deal with some of the social challenges out there.
So when we return, we hear from some mine workers, and we also meet a young woman who has her own way of challenging corruption and poverty through her music. Don't go away. Welcome back to the big debate on business and its role in society. I'm Masechaba Ndlovu. Now, earlier we saw in our film some mine workers who are from Welkom who contracted silicosis from breathing in sand and dust from the mines, which has led to other diseases like TB. Thousands of workers are now taking 6 mining companies to court to fight for compensation for a life of sickness. So I would like to hear from communities who are represented here, particularly from the women who are here. I know that some of you are seated in the front. Am I correct? Is there anyone here who would like to comment on this matter? Who's from Welkom? You are, ma'am. You from Welkom.
Umyeni wami yi-victim ye-TB yasemine. I just want to say today to everyone who has got the power to stand up for us, for our children, for our generation, for us as women. I've been victimized because my husband has got the TB. The mine workers are the worst of South Africa. They are the worst.
You're taking the companies to court?
Yes, we are taking the companies of the mine to court. Yes.
How long has it been, the court case?
For 8 years. We've been trying to find someone, something that can come in front of us and say, this is what is. for your husband who's just the dead body walking. My husband is a dead body walking. Some other women are widows. So we are taking them to court.
Go ahead.
I think the answer is simple. Employers are capitalist in mind, and they establish their company purely to maximize their profit. And I think that is why it is very important that workers, when they are still working, participate through the trade unions. You start a struggle from grassroots, from where your community it is, because we all need each other in terms of building the economy of South Africa. And so it is important that every stakeholder becomes an activist in terms of achieving what we want to see at the end of the day.
Yes, sir. Please stand up for us.
Capitalism has got a way of maximizing profit and exploiting the environment in such a way that our people are exposed and they stand back as if nothing is happening. The issue of income inequality, it's a point in question. This country needs to stand up. We need to have laws that caps the income of these big bosses. What they are earning is immoral compared to what they are giving to the workers that are dying like flies in the mines and on the roads from the mines to where they should go and see their kids and their families.
Kuseni, with everything that's been said around the room, I mean, do you feel that people like you earn too much?
I agree with Vuyo that the issue of inequality has got to be addressed.
I'll
and
take
in
that
the
as a no.
companies that I'm involved in, we constantly monitor the gap between the highest paid and the lowest paid. Why do we monitor it? We monitor it with a view to constantly look at ways of reducing it. We need to push back against inequalities, against poverty, against unemployment. In the ultimate analysis, we need to have a more humane and inclusive society. And business can and must be a force for good for that.
We're always blaming each other, we're pointing fingers at each other, and we all find problems in what we cannot do. He has a problem because South Africans are not saving enough. He has a problem because, no, you cannot invest in this economy the way it is. But when, at what point do we take responsibility as South Africans to say, this is our country, this is where we come from, this is where we need to invest. We can't keep passing the ball all over the place.
Thank you very much. We're going to a break. I've noted you, and every single one of your hands have been noted, and we will be giving you an opportunity to speak. After the break, some music, and then we talk about good jobs and good wages. You're watching The Big Debate.
20 years later on, but capitalist and strong, with the rich extracting value, still they see nothing wrong, as if the earth was not a god enough for man to just believe in. Motherfrackers in the Karoo, fracking heathens, from Oppenheimers to diamonds, Americanas and violence, the uneducated silent city streets, they filled with violence. It's easy to assume they want peace. Trust you turn the volume down on your TV. Lazy politicians in cahoots, making decisions on the basis that we all got greed. We can take a jet plane, we can score an arms deal, but when will we give the people what they need? And when will we give the people what they need? Ooh,
Welcome back to The Big Debate on business and human rights. Let's talk about a new trend among young people to shame companies who behave immorally. There was the campaign against Nike for using child labor, and then there's the public shaming of tax dodgers. Starbucks is one of the most famous cases. In 2013, they earned billions of rands in the UK, but they didn't pay a single cent. And I want to welcome Nancy G, who just sang to us about corruption and poverty, to talk more about this. Your song is called Corruption. That was fantastic, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so you were born in Swaziland and grew up in the UK. How did you get involved with these issues?
I think like growing up in the UK, you saw a lot of what they called economic crises. And so it seems like capitalism is extracting value from human resource as a source of capital. And then you also see capitalism as like there's a deep history behind it in the European world, where land played a big role. So being here in South Africa, I just see what's coming, and I don't want it to go that way, basically, as a young person. Come on, guys.
Come on.
It's becoming a problem.
Come on, that's what I say. Okay, now let's talk about wages, right? We have some workers here, or those who represent workers who have been outsourced, and I'd like to get a comment about that from you. What does it mean for an outsourced worker to be outsourced? Stand up for us, please, sir.
Masichaba, what it means to be outsourced, it means someone else is getting money for your job, not even 5% of what the client gave you. We have workers who are cleaning, especially, they earn far, far, far more less than that person who they clean for. There is a provident fund with the NPC, but these companies, they are non-compliant. They don't pay.
Costa, you work for a company that provides cleaning and security services. Am I correct? Is that accurate, or just security?
Yes, I work for a security company. However, I'm here representing the Security Association of South Africa.
Okay, so why can't companies just hire their own security?
So I think the very first thing we need to do when we speak about outsourcing is we need to draw a firm distinction between outsourcing of workers versus outsourcing of professional competent services. What you're outsourcing is not the labor involved. What you're outsourcing is the broader service. If I run a bank, or if I run a mine, or if I run Massmart, my core business is to do what I do best. So I need a professional services company to come in, give me an end-to-end solution, which involves in part labor, but it involves a whole lot more than that. So I think the debate needs to be fine-tuned a little bit to draw a distinction between labor broking, so a deliberate attempt to outsource labor specifically in order to avoid minimum wages or to avoid paying benefits, from what you get as a professional service. We have worked very, very hard in our sector to bring about a change to the way things are done in the private security industry. And the reason we've done this is because we've realized that if we are going to position ourselves as an industry of professionals, beyond the stigma of labor broking, we're going to have to raise the standards.
Okay.
The procurers of our services are the ones that drive prices down to the extent that non-compliance is fueled. And do you know who the #1 procurer of security services today is?
Local government.
The government and parastatal organizations. So we have everything stacked against us, despite wanting to bring positive change to our industry.
Thank you very much, Costa.
I think what Costa at large has said, it's correct. And we're still striving to improve those conditions. It doesn't take away the fact that majority of our members, both in the cleaning and in the security, do the good work, and yet they earn peanuts. But we are working towards making sure that the industry is transformed.
Patrick, Ayabonga, anybody who wants to jump in here, should we not be giving credit where credit is due? I mean, the man is trying to build up his business to be more moral. What do you say about that?
I would like to introduce a word which hasn't been mentioned yet, nationalisation. And I don't apologise for that, because it's NUMSA's firm policy that we do need to nationalise certainly the mines, the banks, and other key industries like steel, so that they can be run as services for the people.
Kuseni, you wanted to jump right in there.
Yeah, to the point that Patrick is making, to portray nationalization as a panacea, already we do have aspects of our economy that are nationalized. Some are working well, some have got a lot of challenges. We all are familiar about the debate around state-owned companies. We all are familiar about the challenges of other economies, which Patrick knows better, which have gone that route. And what is important is how do we have a globally competitive economy that can create more work for more people, so that we have more workers, we have strong trade unions that can work in the national interest, as Patrick is saying, to grow a global economic, first world economy. Because we can do that, workers around the world are working with their governments and with their companies to get more inward investment so that they can create more opportunities for more of their existing members and the unemployed workers as well.
Bandile?
I think the issue of wages is perhaps the most critical one in making sure that we reorientate this economy. You're going to have to realize that, the issue of, say, national minimum wage and making sure that the very poorest workers are brought out of poverty is in the interest of all of us, but in a serious way. That's the flip side of how we started this debate. This debate was that if you give money to the capitalists, they don't, a lot of it flies off to different countries, sits on cash balances. But if you reorientate the economy to say, give money to the workers, you drive that engine.
Round of applause. Can you see that then, Dick?
No, I just wanted to follow up on, and hence the country is seriously immersed in debates or negotiations around the national minimum wage for all the reasons that have been stated above. And that is why you have at NEDLAC, business, government, labor, the community sitting and talking about a national minimum wage. And a lot of progress has been made in that regard. Where we are now is where we are now going to take the various levels that have been mentioned by the various parties sitting around the table.
So as business, you're not opposed to national minimum wage? Because some businesses are.
Those that are sitting around the table to say we do need a national minimum wage, and business is not opposed to that. And we actually have gone quite a way off now at a stage where, and I'm sure a public announcement will be made, of testing the various levels.
Dick?
We must stop to think about wages as a cost to the economy. Wages are not the cost to the economy. Wages are a part of the national income. How should you speak about sort of growing small business, etc., if you don't have customers who can buy your thing? Instead, households are going into debt. And that is the way that capitalism solved this sort of depressed wage situation. No, you can't have it as wages, but you can have it as a loan instead. You can have it as a credit card, and then you have an extra cost for etc., etc. So wages are not the cost to the economy. The national thrust of workers and the labor movement and unions and so on to better the situation for the majority is not a threat to the economy. It's a part of the solution. And that is, I think, that is a main message that must be pushed out by progressives in this country.
Beautiful. Thank you. When we return, a last word from our audience here in the studio. You're watching The Big Debate.
Lebitso la ka ke Robert Nzabe. Ke hodile ke mokana. Ha ke so bone ntho e mpiro ka etswang ke di-mine tse re sebeditseng. Mine o re qetile. Ha re na matshwafo ka mona rona ba bang. Re fedile. Fela ko o sebeditse nako e. Ke qadile ho sebetsa mine ka 1958. Ke tlohetse mine ka 1998. Ke a ke tlohela mine. Mine o nqetile. O nketsetsa. Ha o nketsetse nothing.
What I want to appeal from my government and the mining house is to give our husbands the treatment for silicosis. Those people are suffering. TB can be treated for 6 months, but not silicosis. We demand that treatment for our husbands.
Welcome back to The Big Debate. I'm Masachaba Ndlovu. Let's hear the last word from our panel. Bandile.
It's very easy to speak of markets and economies as these abstract numbers, and you see the ticker tape on your screen. But we need to return the human side of this. And I think the interventions that need to happen in this economy is one where we take collective action that disrupts the momentum of this economy and actually makes a proper change, like interventions like the national minimum wage, and making sure that policy is geared towards developing the country. No country is built by mistake. It's a matter of deliberate action. It might be pain for a couple of years or even a couple of decades, but it needs to be intentional, and those who have power must be brought to account.
Thank you.
We probably need more in terms of the approach, in terms of the wage negotiations that we engage on. We think in the next round of the wage negotiation, it will be very tough, taking into account that COSATU in the first place was very opposed in terms of the outsourcing. Now that some of the universities has taken back the employees and some of government has insourced back those employees, it will be a very heated debate. And we think that big business should come on board in terms of realigning, adjusting the low salary that is being received by the security and the cleaners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Khanyisile, your brief closing statement.
You know, I think a common theme that has come out even from the audience is the theme around working together. And we can pull each other in different directions and waste lots of energy that we should actually be using to be constructive, to come up with solutions together, understanding that there may be quicker gains in some areas, slower gains in others, but at least we will be making the progress. But if we're spending much more time being antagonistic towards each other, we actually are not going to get to the point where we are making a difference to our people.
Thank you. Tamara.
The one thing that I think we can all agree on is that not enough has changed in the past 22 years. And for me, it's clear that we can't continue to rely on the existing economic structure, existing big firms with entrenched interest, purely to make the difference. So for me, I want to just echo this point around disruption and this point of funding entry and making sure that we have entrepreneurs that can enter and disrupt those concentrated markets. And that also is a call to government. I mean, it is about concerted and considered industrial policy and kind of competition policy intervention.
Thank you. Olano.
I think you need a government, a society, and a business with conscience. So you need individuals who know what is wrong and right, and who will always do what is right.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think one of the things that have come strongly out of this debate is that we've dispelled this notion that business is the goose that lays the egg, and that there is scope for wage-led driven development. But I think one thing that has been missing from the conversation is the role that women play in preparing people for the labor market, but also the role that they play once Otatabe to come back with silicosis in the care work. And I think low umsebenzi is the work that is not compensated that we need to consider.
Thank you. Hussein.
I think we need policy that is about empowering people to get the right skills, to get the right jobs, and also to get the right entrepreneurial opportunities. And I also think that we need policy to create an enabling environment for local businesses as well as foreign businesses to thrive in South Africa. And we need government and business and labor and other players in society to join forces to make South Africa an inclusive society and a world-class society.
Thank you. Dick.
I think that when it comes to the silicosis, if you speak to the lawyers in the silicosis case now, they will tell you that between 20 and 30 workers out of every 100 workers active in the mines today, in the gold mines, have attracted silicosis to some degrees. That really highlights the moral issue. It also highlights the problem that the NUMSA Commerce is raising about the nationalization of the mines. I almost think that the gold mining sector, the gold mining companies, they have given up the goal of performing a legal business. They don't think it's compliant with the maximum profit maximizing enterprise. And it really sort of highlights the issue between capitalism and moral sort of. The silica problem is still there in the economy in the gold mines, and it's reproduced every day.
Thank you.
It's not a historical.
Trevor.
I think there can be no debate that we've all agreed that we come from an unequal past. Things are still not equal. But if we don't work together, it's never going to come right. And to sit out here and just bash big business, it's not going to work. We've got to find a way to work together to make it work.
Thank you. Around the world, business is starting to wake up to the fact that it needs to respect human rights, pay tax, and treat workers well. In other words, business can't make profits at the expense of people. Are South African companies lagging behind? If so, what can we do to stop the looting and hold our CEOs to account? You decide. And thank you for watching The Big Debate. South Africa is rich, and yet most South African workers are poor. Where do the profits go from our gold, our platinum, our tourism, our manufacturing? How much of it is taken overseas or used to pay dividends and bonuses? So a typical mine worker in our platinum mines would take 40 years to earn as much as the CEO's Christmas bonus. So today we ask, is business in South Africa on strike when it comes to wages, investments, and paying their dues? Here to try and answer those questions are Orlando Makubela, Chief Director of Financial Investments and Savings in the National Treasury, Khanyisile Kweyama, CEO of Business Unity South Africa and former Executive Director at Anglo American South Africa, Kuseni Dlamini, Chairman of Massmart, Ayabonga Kawe, Oxfam, Philemon Bembe, a National Coordinator from Satawu, Dick Forsland, Economist and Researcher, Tamara Paramour from the Center for Competition, Regulation and Economic Development, Trevor White, Partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And in our audience, we have workers, we have business people, we have trade unionists and communities from right across South Africa affected by these issues. Welcome to you all. Thank you so much for being here. And you at home can send us your thoughts on Facebook or Twitter. But before we begin our discussion, take a look at this.
South Africa's economy was built on mining, but at what cost to human life? Vuyani Dwadube started mining at 23. He contracted TB and silicosis working underground.
From 79 to 95. Ngo-95 ndiye ndafumana i-retrench. Akhandiyazi ngoba bendibangaya kwezinantikazala kwaba bemayini omzilikazi kuthiwa i-TB yam ayibhatali.
According to workers, mining houses have known for years how to reduce the risks of silicosis. They failed to follow health and safety procedures that could have prevented more cases, in fact, denying that they were even responsible.
Ndifike emayini ndingaguli mna mama bendingaguli emayini imayini ayimqeshi umuntu ogulayo njengoba namhlanje ndike ndeva kunyaka opheleyo lona umntu wabanjwa lithuli lenkomo ithuli lenkomo yintoni.
Now that gold and platinum prices have fallen, companies claim they don't have the resources to pay higher wages and take care of workers' health and other needs.
It's been a tactic of many businesses, and especially large businesses in South Africa, to evade some of the labor legislation that has come out of our past. We've seen over the last couple of years, and this has been the story.
It took billions to London when it moved its headquarters. So how do we get that money back?
Well, I don't know about how you get that money back because when it's gone, it's gone. And you had the former CEO of Anglo Gold saying, Ashanti, saying it was a mistake on the part of the company. It was a mistake on the part of government to allow it. Right. But we are not going to see it come back. And that is a reality that we have to deal with, as sore and painful as it is. So let us deal with what we can fix.
So Tamara, I'll bring you in here. I mean, is it not unrealistic to expect big companies like Anglo to pay for our historic injustices? I mean, don't we need big business in South Africa?
No, I don't think anyone around this table, if I can call it that, would say that we don't need big business in South Africa. But what kind of big business do we need? We also have to look at what leaves the country. You know, because for every kind of entry, there's an entry and there's an exit sometimes. So we have to think about the kind of the money that's leaving illicitly, money that's leaving via tax evasion, perhaps even tax avoidance, etc.
So Dick, I'd like to bring you in here. So Anglo have taken a whole bunch of money out of the country. Yeah. I mean, is it really enough to say, cool, that's happened, you know, we can't get it back, but hey, let's invest?
No, it's not enough. And Anglo Platinum sent off 27 billion rand in dividends in 2009, 2010 to its mother company, Anglo American. And I mean, the Anglo-American is a conglomerate of 900 companies, whereof 90 of them are in tax havens. So you have to have a capacity in the South African Revenue Service, in the tax authorities to come to grips with this. And most importantly, I think, today is to take away the wheel of secrecy over all the daughter companies of these. I mean, that is what we come up for in the
the current economic order is that leaving money in the hands of big businesses doesn't mean that's going to improve the economy. What they do is they keep it in the reserves or they ship it off to financial sectors.
In 1999, Anglo-American, then the world's largest gold mining operation, got permission from the South African government to transfer its primary listing to London, taking billions of rands with them. The company argued this would be good for South Africa. They would raise more capital and would bring money back into the country. But this doesn't seem to have happened. In retrospect, at least one Anglo boss acknowledges
Anglo's decision in 1998 to re-domicile to London was a mistake for the company and a mistake for the country, and I deeply regret it.
This is the tip of the iceberg of money fleeing the country, sometimes legally, sometimes not.
There should be a focus on increasing the capacity and integrity of tax and customs agencies and on strengthening tax legislation to better address the abuse of tax systems between countries that takes place through transfer mispricing and other practices.
Money moved offshore into foreign stock exchanges or tax havens is money that's not paying workers better wages or reaching communities. Many of our companies do reinvest in communities, mainly through corporate social responsibility. From 2012 to 2014, Anglo-Americans spent 100 million on education projects in Limpopo and the Northwest, 3.2 billion over 5 years in healthcare, housing and sanitation. But are these programs sustainable and enough? Vuyani and Zwelinkosi are taking their former employer to court for failing to take care of their health or pay compensation. They are part of a large class action lawsuit involving more than 300,000 workers and 6 mining companies.
Government, vuka emaqandeni sukusikhathalela xa ufuna ivoti kuthi. Awukujonge kakuhle ezi mine zitya amagazi wabantu zisenza ingcukuthi. Sikwazi ukubhatalwa, sikwazi ukukhulisa abantwana bethu.
So, Khanyisile, I'll start with you. Companies like the one that you headed, Anglo-American, made trillions through the apartheid years. But at the TRC, business said that it bore little to no responsibility for the human rights abuses, for the exploitation of workers. Have we let you off the hook?
You know, I cannot speak on behalf of Anglo-American, as
Sure.
you properly said, former. But I can tell you that some of the comments that I made by the victims of certain of the areas are very valid. And I think where we are in South Africa today, there is quite a big acknowledgement by business that there is a lot that has been done in the past that has been unjust. We lived in a society that absolutely had no recognition for workers and basically supported a system that said you can thrive and workers don't have to thrive. We have moved on in terms of policies, in terms of legislation. Whether we have been able to address that adequately, no one would ever say it's enough.
Sure. Part of the problem is that a lot of money has left the country. I mean, for instance, in 1998, Anglo-American